Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Teacher Brett, and if you are joining me for the first time, I talk about all things virtual and online teaching. So I'm happy for you to join us. Grab a cup of coffee and sit back and relax, because today we are going to chat about interviewing for a virtual teaching position. Let's go. So I have had a lot of you interested in virtual teaching and what that looks like and how you can get into virtual teaching. I have a lot of followers who do online ESL teaching with GoGoKid or VIP Kid or any of those other different Chinese or other companies out there. But this year I started teaching at a virtual public school in the US. So it's typical hours. I'm teaching regular students just like I would in a brick and mortar setting. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you guys about, we went over the application process last week, and this week I wanted to talk to you guys about interviewing. So if you missed the video on applying, go ahead and check it out. I'll put a link up here for you to do that, or put a link down below. But interviewing for these positions I found to be pretty similar to interviewing for a brick and mortar teaching position. I interviewed at 4 different places, virtual teaching jobs here over the last few months. And they were each a little bit different. So I'll talk to you guys about those. The first place that I interviewed at was like a correspondence type high school, like credit recovery, or students who could only do schooling, they're actors or they are big sports people, and they're traveling, so they needed just like a correspondence type course. So for this job, it was a part-time position, and you would be basically grading submissions, grading essays, grading what they've submitted on the computer. Not a lot of interaction, one-on-one with the students. So there was no live classes or anything like that. So for this position, I interviewed, first I got called to do a phone interview. So I just did an initial kind of phone interview, get to know you, tell you about the job. And it was with 2 different people were on the phone. And they just asked me basic questions, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? They talked a little bit about the job, wanting to see if it would be a good fit for something I'd want to do. And then after that, they sent me a link to do a video recorded interview. So for this video recorded interview, and I actually did something similar for another position that I'll talk about, but during the recorded interview, you basically log onto this website type thing, and they give you like a question, and then you've got like 30 seconds to think about your answer, and then it tape records you. You've got like 2 or 3 minutes to give an answer. And it goes through a series of questions like that. This one just had basic, interview type questions. My dog Seppi is over there. Seppi! Barking at imaginary things because he's crazy. He's old and crazy. Hopefully he will be quiet. So this one had just basic interview type questions. How would you, differentiate instruction for people? What do you think is your strengths? Those types of things, really simple. So that was all that I did for that. And then it took them forever to get back to me, and about a month later, they called and left me a message that I could have the job if I wanted it. But at that point, I had moved on. So I did not want that job. With that one, they also required you to be available for phone calls. So you would take shifts, 4-hour shifts throughout the week, where you would just kind of be there, and kids from any class at all could call into the helpline, and you would help them, and you could look up their grades and, help them with their assignments. As the teacher, if you were their teacher, you would have to do a lot of, whenever you're inputting grades, it was all online. You'd write comments online. You could do voice recording comments, so that whoever was in the helpline, they could go back and look at your comments, why you graded it the way you did, and they could adjust. You could actually adjust the grades that a teacher had given through the helpline and that sort of thing. So I decided against that one because by that point I had found some other jobs. The second job that I applied for was another virtual teaching job. This was also a special ed job. For this one, I did a phone interview with about 4 different people that were on the phone. And again, asked me basic interview questions. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Tell us about, you, what kind of jobs you have, what kind of experience you have, how would you, adjust to different students, all those basic types of questions. After that, I did get a call back and they wanted me to come into their main office to do a in-person live interview where I would teach a lesson to a group of people. Now, for this job, they required you to actually go into the office to do the virtual teaching if you lived within 50 miles of the main office. The main office was in Harrisburg and I was like 48 miles away. So they were going to require me to actually drive to the office every day and sit in a cubicle to teach the classes. So, I initially had set up the interview and then I decided that this was not for me, and I canceled the interview. So I did not go forward and do the live interview, live teaching class with them. And then the next two that I did were both K-12 schools. One was an actual K-12 school, one just used K-12 curriculum. And had left the K-12 like brand official schools, but they were still a K-12 school. It's a little bit complicated, but regardless, none of that matters. Both of those interview processes were very similar. So for the K-12 school interview process, what I did was a initial phone call with just one person for each of those ones. They told me about the position, what they were looking for, and asked, a little bit about me. And then that was like the first interview, but it was really basic, not long at all. And then they set up a meeting on the computer. So the second interview was a meeting on the computer where you logged in, you were on video, you were on the microphone, and they kind of did the more official interview questions. And this was with two people. One they did over Microsoft Teams, and one was in Zoom. I think so. Yeah, Zoom. Yeah. It was in Zoom, wasn't it? Yeah, it was in Zoom. Trying to remember now. Yeah, it was in Zoom. So both of those, again, were very similar. They asked official interview questions. They actually asked the exact same questions. So for the second interview, I was like, I got this. I know exactly what they're going to ask. And it was basically about, what would you do if this happened? What is your, teaching philosophy, that sort of thing. Again, basic interview questions. After that was finished, then I was invited for both of those jobs to come back and do a lesson. So for the lesson, it was actually in Blackboard Collaborate, which is what K-12 uses right now, although many schools are going to a different one next year. But that's the platform that they use to teach their lessons. So I got a email that kind of gave me instructions. The first was for a middle school special ed position. The second one was for a high school special ed position. For the middle school special education position, they gave me a standard, like a specific standard that they wanted me to teach. And I had to develop a lesson for that, a 20-minute lesson that I'd give. So for that, you had to actually make a PowerPoint because that's generally how the lessons go at K-12. You have some curriculum, but you make a PowerPoint to give the presentation to the student. It also included some instruction videos, how to use Blackboard. And then basically it was up to you. You had to create the lesson and then present it. For the high school one, they didn't give me a specific standard, but they just said, hey, use one of these standards for that grade level. Same thing, I had to come up with a lesson to present. So for both of those, I logged into the computer. There was two people, I think, in each of those that were logged in as students. We just gave a very brief, like, okay, are you ready? Yeah, we're ready. Okay, let's go. There wasn't a lot before the interview. And then I taught the lesson. So you had to upload the PowerPoint and into the system. And then I taught the lesson just like they were students. Now, if you were brand new to virtual teaching, this would be a little bit overwhelming. So if you are brand new to online teaching, you've never worked at VIP Kid or GoGo Kid or anything like that, you don't know how online teaching works, you're going to want to spend some time with this. Even if you have worked at another company online, The platform is a little bit more complicated. Now, I was kind of familiar with the platform because my son, actually two of my sons have done some K-12 schools at different points in the past when we had them at home. So I was familiar to different things like the polling tools and the chat box and green check and red X's. These are all things that you can use to get students participation. I was familiar because of VIP Kid and GoGo Kid and other companies on being on video and making sure my microphone was working and kind of presenting, on camera. So if you don't have any familiarity, that word. If you don't have any background in these things, you want to take some time. It was a little bit tricky because I couldn't get into the classroom to practice and I don't know if that was just, the link they gave me, it didn't take me to a Blackboard classroom. It took me to like some new version, which wasn't helpful. So if they give you some kind of link to practice, you definitely want to try and do that. Otherwise, definitely read up on all of the information that they give you, on kind of the tutorials. Try and log in a little bit early. I logged in about 10, 15 minutes early, but I couldn't get my PowerPoint to load because I didn't have Microsoft PowerPoint on my computer. I only had Google Slides, and it would not load. When I saved it as a PowerPoint, it still wouldn't load right. So anyway, they had to actually load it for me from the lesson that I emailed them. I did have to email them the lesson like a day beforehand, so I had to email it to them in advance. So after I taught the lesson, they gave some quick feedback. They basically were like, oh yeah, you definitely are familiar with, online teaching, very interactive. Really that's, I think what they're looking for is someone who's going to be able to get the kids' attention, and keep their attention. It is different from the online ESL teaching because you don't necessarily see the students. Now, some schools out there, you might be able to see the students. I couldn't see the students. It's just my camera screen and the PowerPoint, and then you can communicate with them in the chat box or by using the different polling tools and stuff that they have that way. So I think they are looking for people who can kind of get that participation from the students, and make sure that they're engaged in the lesson. So they gave me some brief feedback about the lesson, and basically said, okay, we'll be in touch with you if we decide to move forward. Both the K-12 schools basically said, if we decide to move forward, you're going to hear from us. If we don't decide to move forward at some point down the line, you're going to get an email from K-12 saying the position has been closed. So I was a little bit nervous about that. I interviewed for both of those positions, one day, one the next day. I heard from the middle school position. I actually never heard back from them because when I was in the high school position level, they asked, we see that you applied for these other positions, which would you rather have? And I said, I'd rather have the high school position. So I think they probably communicated with each other. I never heard back from the middle school position, but then on Friday, I interviewed on a Monday and then a Tuesday. And on Friday, I got an email from K-12 saying the position has been closed. Well, I applied for like 15 different positions on K-12, and it didn't specify like which one of the 15 positions had been closed. So I got that on Friday, and I was thinking like, oh my gosh, I didn't get it. I was so disappointed. That was like Friday morning, and I kept thinking, well, like, I'm not sure. Like, what does this mean? Is it the position I applied for? Is it one of the other positions? Like, I have no idea. Should I email them? Does that seem weird? Like, I was just going through all of my introverted questions in my head, like, how do I reach out to them? Like, should I email them? Should I call them? Thankfully, Friday afternoon, I got an email from the supervisor for the high school special ed position, which was the one that I really wanted, saying, hey, we just want to let you know we are moving forward with your application. You probably won't hear from the HR department until Monday. So I was really thankful that she had sent me that. Otherwise, all weekend long, I would have been totally worried about the position and whether I got it. But I didn't have to worry about it. I knew I had it. And then, so Monday, I heard from HR. They gave me like a list of things to do, everything I had to gather together, all of the paperwork. I had to get a new FBI background checks done because it had to be a specific code for charter schools. When I did that, I had to get a TB test done because, I don't know, apparently TB can travel through the computers or something, but it was a Pennsylvania requirement, so I had to get a new TB test done. Had to send them copies of all of my transcripts, my teaching license, couple other background checks that I already had. And so I sent all of that information to them. They then sent me a bunch of other things I had to do, all the paperwork you have to fill out, all that good stuff. And then they set me up for a training. And the first day of training was actually at the HR department, which conveniently is only about 30 minutes from me. So it was like a full day training. I went to the training, they gave me my computer, my laptop, or my printer, all my passwords, all that kind of stuff. I also met with HR and the payment role people. I was the only person there. This was the first year that they had done like these live trainings, which I think was really nice. If you were from farther away, if you were like 2 hours or more, they actually paid for you to go to to stay in a hotel the night before. They gave I got to order lunch, and basically I just like hung out with different people throughout the day, telling me about the company. Everyone was super nice. I was really pleased with the experience. And then the next couple of days was like training. So that was set up by like my department head. So I shadowed some people. There was some online trainings that I had to do through the Department of Education and through the school. And then the next week I got to actually start teaching. I was in a position where I was actually taking over for a teacher who was moving to another position. So it was really nice and really beneficial because I got to kind of shadow her the first week and just see what she was doing. And then the next week, which was actually this past week, I was in charge of all the teaching and everything, but she had already done the lesson plans and the PowerPoint, so I just got to use her stuff. I didn't have to do a lot of work. And then I did the lesson, but she was still in the classrooms with me, so she was still there in case I needed any help. Everything went smoothly. I didn't need her help, but it was really nice to have somebody that I knew was there in case something went wrong, especially trying to work with a new platform, lots of complications, that sort of thing. But everything went really smoothly, and now next week I will be teaching completely on my own. No one else will be in the classrooms with me, and I will be talking to you guys all about that because I am teaching PE. How do you teach PE online? Well, I'm going to talk to you guys about that. I'm teaching reading, and I teach social skills. And I am working with a group of kind of self-contained students, high school students. Basically, they kind of rotate, throughout the special ed department to the different teachers. It's a really interesting program. I'm really excited to be in it, and I can't wait to talk to you guys more about that. So I hope that was helpful, gave you kind of a glimpse into what some of the different interview processes could look like. There are so many different opportunities out there for virtual teaching. I'm sure every school does it a little bit differently, but this is kind of what I experienced. I would love to hear more from you guys, especially those of you that are virtual teachers. What was your interview experience like? Let us know down below because I have lots of followers who are interested in this process and jumping into this pool. So it'd be great to hear from other states and other areas what your interview process looked like. I hope you come on back and join me for the next one. It was great sitting and talking with you. Ta-ta for now. Goodbye. That was super cringe. Did I just say ta-ta for now? I did. Oh well. Bye.